Okay, guys, and we're back with another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest. I'm Seth from the Owens on the podcast, and this is episode 73 of my side quest. Now, in this episode, we're going to be looking at a Bleacher Report article where they're ranking some of John Cena's greatest ever rivals. Now, we're going to kick off with some honourable mentions, some names that I think probably rightfully so are in honourable mentions, and then some names that I'm a bit surprised to see here. So, kicking it off with Triple H, obviously Cena and Triple H had their match at WrestleMania 22, and was a decent build up. And to be fair, this is sort of unmemorable in a lot of ways, where I don't really have any great memories of these two having great singles matches with each other. Sorry, I'll make that clear. Like, I've seen Cena have great matches, I've seen Triple H have great matches, but when I think of John Cena great matches, I don't think of Triple H, and when I think of Triple H's great matches, I don't think of John Cena. Of course, during this time, both guys were, in a lot of ways at the height of their game in terms of popularity and stuff, and they really were the faces of that generation. Obviously, Triple H had been around for a lot longer than John Cena at that point. Triple H had been around from the Attitude Era, but was one of the top guys. I don't think he was ever really the top guy up until that came a bit later, post the Attitude Era. But during the Attitude Era, I wouldn't really say Triple H was a top guy. It was more, Cena, not Cena. It was more Rock and Austin were the top guys, and then once they left, Triple H became a top guy, and then you sort of from that era went into the Batista's, Triple H, Batista's, John Cena's, Randy Orton's, etc. But yeah, I guess because both guys are so iconic during this time of wrestling, I guess it makes sense for Triple H to be a honourable mention for John Cena's greatest rivals. But I wouldn't have him anything more than that. Then next we've got Kevin Owens, who I think is definitely worth being on the honourable mentions list because off rip, Kevin Owens made an immediate impact in WWE when he joined the main roster. When he debuted in May 2015 and he laid out John Cena, he then actually got a clean victory over John Cena at the Elimination Chamber, and then went on to lose next two pay-per-view matches. But that really set the tone for Kevin Owens' entire WWE main roster career, and it was also like a change of pace for John Cena as well. It felt like that point he sort of changed his role on the card, and I think Kevin Owens was like one of the first guys that John Cena really sort of put over, without being forced to. Like John Cena obviously put over, Daniel Bryan and stuff, but that was and CM Punk, but there was tons of momentum going into those matches for those guys. Kevin Owens owes a lot of his WWE main roster career to John Cena because John Cena putting him over in that first match at Elimination Chamber was insane, and you don't see that often. Very rarely do you see that in wrestling, but we saw it there, and yeah, like I said, Kevin Owens rightfully deserves to be on that honourable mentions list for John Cena's greatest rivalries. In addition to all that Kevin Owens has achieved in the WWE main roster as well. And then we've got probably the last person that's going to be on the honourable mentions list. That's JBL. Now, JBL deserves a ton of credit because this was really, in my opinion, John Cena's first big rivalry, his first main event rivalry. And the build was so much, we even saw it as a main event for WrestleMania 21. You know, the match itself wasn't amazing, the WrestleMania 21 match, but they had a match at Judgment Day 2005, which was, you know, loads of blood, which I love, loads of gore and blood, and I quit match. Insane match. I really enjoyed watching that because of the storytelling and, like I said, the blood. But they also would have sort of mini rivalries in 2008 and 2009 as well. I don't recall the rivalry too much in 2009. I haven't got great memory of that period there. But yeah, JBL deserves a ton of credit for getting where John Cena is at this moment because it was his first main event rivalry. Then we've got number 7, Brock Lesnar. Now, Brock Lesnar definitely has got an interesting place in John Cena's history. Of course, they feuded initially back in Brock Lesnar's first run and early on in John Cena's career. I want to say this was around 2003 times, 2003, 2004 times. Yeah, 2003. But it wasn't until, in my opinion, Brock Lesnar came back in 2012 when they really got into it, right? So this was a completely different Brock Lesnar that we had seen from 2003, 2004. This was a Brock Lesnar that had been in the NFL, had been a UFC heavyweight champion, and had now come back to WWE. First match back, first night after WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar comes back, insane pop, an insane situation. F5's John Cena. They ever fight at, they have their match at Extreme Rules, and they have a very good match at Extreme Rules. Extremely underrated. I definitely recommend. If you haven't seen that match, go back and watch it. It was brutal. I remember Brock Lesnar trying to jump over the top rope. It was very scary, very weird, an unpredictable move from Brock Lesnar there, but a great moment nonetheless. And then we go on. Then we fast forward to when Brock Lesnar absolutely destroyed John Cena at SummerSlam. That was probably one of the most shocking matches I've seen in wrestling, where you expect, okay, going into that match, I'm expecting it to be hard hitting, probably quite similar to their Extreme Rules match 2012, but it couldn't have been further apart from each other. Where John Cena basically got no offense in this match. None at all. Got absolutely dominated from pillar to post. Got suplexed. I can't even remember how many times this dude got suplexed, right? Just again and again and again. Dropped on his head. Just again and again and again. Then got pinned, and that was it. Like, that was it. John Cena just got squashed by Brock Lesnar at that SummerSlam match in 2014. And yeah, that's it. Just absolutely dominated. And then we fast forward again to probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest triple threat matches of all time, when we saw Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, and John Cena at the Royal, like I said, Royal Rumble 2015. They had their match. This was a pay per view at the time. I remember people didn't have a ton of excitement for, because it didn't feel like there was really any stakes. It never really felt in the lead up to this match that Brock was ever going to lose the title. It didn't feel like, so at the time, Seth Rollins had the Money in the Bank briefcase, right? And he was facing Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar had just destroyed John Cena. So you was like, well, John Cena's probably not going to win the belt because Brock Lesnar already destroyed him. And then then Seth Rollins isn't going to win the belt because he's got the Money in the Bank briefcase. So it's just going to be an easy retain for Brock, I guess. And then the match happens, and it was full of excitement, full of false finishes, close finishes, big spots. They put Brock through a table. He still came back, won the match. It was a great triple threat match. Considering, obviously, we all know all three of these guys can put on a great match when they want to. They can all put on a great match, but I remember at the time there wasn't a ton of hype coming into it for that exact reason, where we're thinking, well, Brock's obviously going to win because in terms of storyline wise, it doesn't make sense for the belt to go to anyone else. But yeah. Then next we've got Kurt Angle, and I do agree that Kurt Angle is a great rival for John Cena, but I think John Cena is more of a great rival for Kurt Angle more than the other way around, if that makes sense. So I think John Cena's got a ton of probably better rivalries. I'd probably say maybe JBL is better. Perhaps even Kevin Owens is a better rivalry for John Cena than Kurt Angle is. But Kurt Angle is, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean when I'm saying that? Where I think John Cena is a huge rival for Kurt Angle, but not the other way around. But of course, similar to JBL, this was one of John Cena's very first storylines. Huge storyline for John Cena, obviously, when he came in 2002, made his debut with the ruthless aggression and the perfectly executed slap across the face. That was insane. And then they would feud in late 2003. Kurt Angle would beat John Cena at No Mercy 2003, and then once again in 2005 they would feud again, but this time the roles were slightly reversed, where John Cena was in his current, in his first WWE title reign, and Angle was the red hot number one contender. But Kurt Angle had a request to WWE management for John Cena to be his final match in WrestleMania 35, which I know, all the fans listening to this and all of us would have loved to seen that, but for some reason, WWE were just hell-bent on it being Baron Corbin for some reason. But there's nothing we can do to change that now. I think if that match had have happened, Cena v Angle at WrestleMania 35, I probably would have had Angle on this list, in my opinion, because it would have felt like a full circle moment, but it wasn't to be. And then next we've got AJ Styles. Now AJ Styles, similarly to Kevin Owens, I think is a guy that really owes a lot of his WWE main roster career to John Cena, where these matches between, like I was saying earlier, John Cena and Kevin Owens, and now the matches between John Cena and AJ Styles, these matches were so important in the development of AJ Styles. You know, AJ Styles coming in, some people knew him. I wouldn't say some people. A lot of the fans knew him. Like, he was getting big reactions from his Royal Rumble debut to subsequent, appearances. He was getting big, big reactions. But it is different. It's just a different vibe when you're, established WWE star rather than being an established TNA New Japan star coming into WWE. The vibe is very different, for sure. But AJ Styles, like I said, again, owes a lot of his career to him. These two put on some great matches throughout the years. Put on some great matches, and AJ Styles had a really long title reign on when he was on SmackDown Live. And I remember, I can list off, a number of their great matches that AJ Styles and John Cena had. And so rightfully so, I think AJ Styles should be on this list, right next to Kevin Owens, in my opinion. I think these two are just as good of rivalries for John Cena, in my opinion. So yeah, go on to who's next. The Rock. Okay. The Rock, I'm surprised The Rock's not a bit higher because, of course, this was, the generational moment, these two. It was the Attitude Era the modern PG era. The faces of two eras against one another. Um, Really long storyline. I liked, how they played it out over years and years and years. Obviously, now is even more apropos, is even more appropriate and more, pungent than was before, particularly with John Cena's heel turn and everything. But that's for another time. But the first match was really good. The second match I really enjoyed as well because they're just great moments. Now, of course, you're asking me which in-ring was better, John Cena v AJ Styles or John Cena and Kevin Owens against John Cena and The Rock. Of course, I'm going to say John Cena and AJ Styles, but AJ Styles, as great of a wrestler as he is, he's not capable of the long-term storytelling that Rock and John Cena are. Like, he's just not. And AJ Styles is a tremendous wrestler, one of my favorites of all time. But there's levels to this game, levels to the promos, levels to the aura, levels to the acting, levels to the nuances that they're able to carry out. Even even a segment where they're doing nothing but just walking backstage, The Rock's got that aura. And around this time, John Cena definitely had that aura too. Particularly after the first loss, I remember we started to see more of a more no nonsense, a bit of a not hardcore, but more of a hard ass type of John Cena, where he just lost the match, and that was a huge match for him to lose, and that sort of gave birth to a more aggressive version of Cena. And then he came back the year after, and he beat The Rock at WrestleMania 28. So Rock's definitely up there because the match between them two probably drew in ungodly amounts of money for WWE. Then we've got Randy Orton, who, again, like The Rock, is like a face of a generation. Obviously, Cena and Orton are of the same generation. They're the faces of this not current generation, but the previous generation, the PG era. Um, Even though, in my opinion, they've never really had insanely great matches with each other. Like, I'd much rather watch an AJ Styles v John Cena match or a Kevin Owens v John Cena match over a Randy Orton v John Cena match. Now, they're able, because they're both faces of the generation, they're able to sort of make these great storylines. And I won't take that away from them at all. Some of the storylines these guys have been amazing storylines, particularly ones when they unified the world title and WWE title, for example. But in terms of matches, they've been good. They've put on some good matches, of course. But like I said, they're not some of Cena's best matches in my opinion. But to reiterate again, Randy Orton and John Cena, both faces of the generation, and Randy Orton 100% deserves to be on this list of John Cena's greatest rivals. Then we've got Edge. Edge low-key could be number one. yeah, it's crazy. I mean, looking back on it, John Cena had so many great rivalries, right? So many. Because off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the recent ones, the Kevin Owens, the AJ Styles. But you look back at JBL, you look back at a Kurt Angle and Edge. Like they've had some great storylines. I remember the WrestleMania 25 match between Big Show, Edge, and John Cena. And even though, in my opinion, John Cena was kind of just pushed into that storyline, um, because obviously they had the very weird storyline with Edge and Vicky Guerrero and Big Show. Very, very, very weird, but that definitely sums up 2009 WWE in a lot of ways. But John Cena was kind of forced into that title, into that match to make it a triple threat for the title. And obviously John Cena had that, insane entrance when they had all the clone John Cenas and the "You Can't See Me." That was that was pretty fun. But Edge, yeah, Edge definitely an interesting story, and interesting rivalry for John Cena, because for a lot of John Cena's rivalries, yeah, I would say, yeah, for a lot of them, because John Cena was face for so long, all of these guys that were facing him, they were all heels. Which is why now I'm really excited to see the storylines that they can do with John Cena, because now he's heel. Where, of course, we've seen Orton v Cena loads of times, but we've never seen heel Orton v face. No, we've never seen heel Cena v face Orton. We've never seen that. So very interesting. And like I said, Edge 100% is a great rivalry for John Cena. They've had some great matches over the years. Um, Edge, of course, cashed in Money in the Bank on John Cena at New Year's Revolution 2006, and that was Edge's first WWE title win. Edge's first WWE title win. So very interesting. Like I said, I'm not surprised Edge is on here. Edge deserves to be on here. It's just a shame. It's such a shame that Edge is in AEW right now, because I would have loved to see Edge on John Cena's retirement tour as well. Would have loved to see it. And then lastly, we've got CM Punk. CM Punk's got to be the best one. In terms of purely the storyline, again, for both guys, what they represented at the time, you had anti-establishment rebel in Punk, and you had, Mr. Face that runs the place in John Cena. These guys, in terms of storyline, like with Edge, like Randy Orton, these guys couldn't have been polar opposites to one another. And you could tell immediately. You could tell from the way they wrestled, the way they talked, their promos, their presentation. Each guy, they could not have been further apart from each other, right? So yeah, of course they put on a great match at Money in the Bank 2011. That's probably one of Cena's best ever matches. It's CM Punk's best ever win. Let's get that out there without a shadow of a doubt. That's CM Punk's best ever win. But yeah, CM Punk's number one, and I'm hoping some point this year we're going to see that again. I'm hoping we will. I think we will. Now that CM Punk's back in WWE, something I never thought would happen. I mean, who would have thought in 2025 you would have Cena turning heel, and CM Punk in WWE? If you told me that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you, man. Would not have believed you for a second. But yeah, a longer episode here. We looked at a ton of John Cena's rivalries, a ton of his different matches here. So yeah, that's it from me. Another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest in the bag, episode 73, and I'm out. Peace.